I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. The sex instinct will be eradicated. We shall abolish the orgasm. There will be no loyalty except loyalty to the party. But always there will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
What's going on, everyone? It's Nina Infinity. Welcome to my channel on this Wednesday. This is a special Breaking the Narrative because it's not at 10 Eastern, but you know it's special because Viva is here, my very special guest. So thank you for joining me today, Viva. Hello.
I mean, thank you for accommodating because 10 o'clock is past my bedtime.
Of course, no problem. I understand you're a parent. You have to deal with a lot of stuff.
Parents, the kids don't go to bed unless we fall asleep with them, and then typically I'm asleep in a tiny little bed by 10 or 10:30. So thank you very much, and thank you for having me. This is going to be good.
Of course, yeah. I'm so happy that you're here, and we've got so much to talk about. I have to say that your sign has constantly made me think that you have purple hair now, which I think is funny because I've been saying that we should take the colored hair back. Like I'm like, because when I was a teenager, I wanted to have blue hair, but then I didn't want to bleach my hair because I didn't want to do the blue. But now I feel like, because that used to be like what it meant to be like punk rock and against the establishment.
I did bleach my hair when I was a kid. When my hair used to be about this long, when I was 20, give or take, I bleached it, streaked it. So I went into the salon and they put that little thing on your head and teased out little strands of hair, bleached it, and I loved it. And then once before I cut it, I dyed it pink. And I just texted my brother to see if he can find that picture. If I can find that picture, it was not much different than this color here. But yeah, once upon a time, dyeing the hair was, I say, rebellion and not conformity. Whereas it seems to be the inverse
opposite
today.
Yeah, it's bizarre world now. So everything that used to be, different and in our time is now the opposite. And you're like, okay, well, what? Like, I always feel like there's been at some point we crossed over. I don't know if it was CERN or I don't know if it was, the 2012 Mayan calendar was correct and we actually did, like, the world did end. I'm not sure, but something sure changed. And now we live in clown dimension because it's constantly just something else.
I was thinking about it. I mean, I did an interview with Jack Posobiec for Turning Point USA earlier today, and we were talking about it. Something has broken. Like everyone likes to say, well, you don't know what it was like when we were kids. I can imagine in the history of America a couple of eras where there was such a radical social divide, but maybe also like an existential crisis, like maybe with Vietnam, maybe during the Cold War. But in my lifetime, nothing ever like this. Even in '99 with Y2K, when we were convinced the world was going to end, I mean, there was madness and insanity and panic, but like it feels like something is fundamentally and irreparably broken in the zeitgeist of what was a free and democratic Western society. And not to get black-pilled, I
Go
told you
for it.
earlier,
This
Nina,
is the right show. This is an infinite hope. So get as black pilled as you want on here.
no, I'm just gonna say, if anybody detects that I'm a little angry, I'm angry at something else where without getting into details, the adults in the schooling world for my kids have just shown to my kids, or at least one of them, how idiotic, bureaucratic, and obstinate adults can be. Adults in positions of power, when instead of looking to solve problems, people look to enforce rules, arbitrary, idiotic rules that are easily circumvented. Like when Nina, I once did a marathon in it was called the Sky Marathon Series. It was in Chamonix, France. It was a marathon through the Mont Blanc Mountains, and I showed up there with my wife. I think we had 2 kids at the time, and we showed up the day before the marathon. It was on a Saturday. And we show up and I see these signs, and all the signs are saying le kilomètre vertical, the vertical kilometer. I was like, oh, cool. What's the vertical kilometer? It sounds interesting. And they say, oh, it's an amazing race where you race. It's a 5-kilometer race up the mountain. I forget what it was called. It might have been Chamonix. And you ascend like 1,000 meters over the course of this 5-kilometer race. And I was like, that sounds really cool. Where's the race? And you see it like zigzags up the mountain. And so I go and I was like, I want to do this. And I asked my wife, I was like, can I do this? She's like, go if you can get in. So I go and ask somebody, and I say that, you know, can I join this race? And then the guy goes, mais non, c'est plein depuis 9 mois. It's like, it's been full since September, 9 months. It's like, oh, okay. I walk back, go over, find somebody who's smiling and say, hey, can I get into the race? And like, you registered? I was like, no, but like, surely someone didn't come. And they're like, they said, I like the way you smile. You can go do it. Meanwhile, my wife was livid, and I didn't really know this because I dumped her with the 2 kids. We hadn't even like brought our luggage to the hotel. And I did this race, and it was amazing.
That's cool.
Adults that want to find solutions to bureaucratic problems should be the rule, not the exception. And my kid has learned the opposite today.
That's interesting that you say that about like the person, right? Like you kind of got the opposite thing from another individual, right? And I've heard this many times with regards to, because I'm not vaccinated, so I can't come into the United States right now. And I've heard many times this whole situation about, it depends who you run into, because they're not asking everyone apparently for the, you know, your pass. But it's one of those things where if you run into the wrong person, you could get banned, you know, of coming into the country for the next 5-10 years, depending on, you know, who you run into, kind of thing. And it's just like, that always fascinates me, because it always depends on the kind of person it is, what they're going through that day. Maybe they had an issue. Maybe they had a bad taco earlier. Like, you know, maybe they're hungry. Like, who knows?
And it's an interplay. Like you will not get your way by coming off like a jackass or like an overly aggressive individual ever, and certainly not right away. Flip side is, once you realize that you're just not going to make any headway, well, then the what's the word I'm looking for? The reluctance, you know, that which holds you back from being a little bit angrier dissolves. But knowing that everybody can identify me by name, I don't lose my temper on calls that people can record and say, look, I got Viva berating a high school team. But no, like, you know, it depends on the person. Like someone who's going to be looking for a solution, and you'll know if you're dealing with that person. But it blows my mind. Like, just differences in humans in applications of rules. When we came over the border, because yes, the US is last country on earth to ask for vaccine requirements, I get an employee of Air Canada asking me for my papers. And the email that I sent to myself at the time was "The papers for when they ask," and I spelt it to myself in a German way so that I can more easily find it. The papers, P-A-P-A-H-S. I was like, you realize, like, you're asking, what counts as vaccinated is someone whose last shot was 2 years ago, and yet someone can literally come in vaccinated but carrying COVID now, and they'll just be told to go. You know, I said, it makes no sense, but they were just following the rules.
Yeah,
that drives me nuts.
That was the Yahtzee way. We were just following the rules, man. I don't know. You know, I would just taking people from one line to this place that they might die in, but whatever. Like, I was just following the rules.
And they're doing it now. They're doing it now. Like, oh, you didn't let me. Like, I'm going straight to COVID. You didn't let a family be with the loved one as they were dying. Well, those were the protocols. I was just following the rules. Like, this is how we've seen it in real time now. People follow the rules, literally to totalitarianism.
Well, and it's funny because I remember in Canada in school learning about World War II, and I remember when, never forget, like, the never forget.
Nie wieder. My
Yeah.
dad came back with a coin from Berlin when he went out. Nie wieder. Never forget.
And I remember asking my teacher, well, why didn't anyone do anything? I don't understand. Like, when you're a kid, you can't really quite grasp your mind around how an entire society can just go along, like just go along with whatever is going on because the rules justify it or the rules say that it's okay. And then, you talk about how rules, especially with law, that rules can be changed. Rules are arbitrary, like basically, and they can be changed immediately depending on who's in power and who's putting those in play.
Well, the thing is, it's the following the rules. And now that we've lived through it, I realize that it is a gradation of events. It's not just like, well, here's the new law, now do it, because most people will say, well, screw that, I'm not doing it. But there's a gradation of laws. There's a gradation of forcing dependence on the state. Now I'm thinking strictly World War II Germany, or take Stalin Russia. Like, how do you compel people to say, I cannot afford to break the rules? You get them totally subservient to and dependent on the state or on the government. You get them to believe that they can't live without the government, or that they actually can't live without the government.
100%.
And so in Nazi Germany, like when it came to the point where it said we were just following rules, it's because if they didn't follow the rules, they'd get imprisoned, they'd get fired, they would get punished themselves. And so during COVID, it's like, it didn't start off with everybody just saying, I was just following the rules. It's like, they let things happen bit by bit to the point where they say, well, now I'm just following the rules because I can't afford to break the rules. I can't go to jail.
I mean, Viva, you're absolutely correct, because I mean, I don't have to go back to World War II for me, because that's the country I was born into. The country that changed basically right around, right before I was born. So, and I'm talking about Iran, because the revolution, once the revolution happened and things changed, it's like as if there was this thing that came over the people, and then everybody had to start following the rules that were unjust, that made absolutely no sense, but they had to follow it, because if they didn't, they'd go to prison, they'd go to, they'd die, all sorts of different things. Their families' lives could be completely ruined. These things happen, and that's why it's so frightening to see it happen within our lifetime in countries like Canada, where we ran away to the country of Canada so that we can be safe from that result. And then it's as if it followed us there. And it's absolutely kind of mind-boggling to just kind of think about where we've ended up as a society, especially Canadians.
Well, the people, the irony is now at the beginning, and people have seen my evolution in real time when, Gina, what's her last name? Not DeLorean.
Carano?
Gina Carano, yeah. When she got in trouble for that post about how in Nazi Germany they got basically neighbors to hate neighbors, and I remember I put out my vlog, the car vlog at the time.
I have it; it's right here.
Yeah, that's the post, and I said, like World War II analogies. I made them very reluctantly, because on the one hand, they have to be made with parsimony. Not everything is just Nazi Germany because you don't like it. Not everyone's a Nazi, a Yahtzee because you don't like them. They're risky analogies, and whenever you make them, you're skirting with them being weaponized by people who don't understand them or who deliberately want to misunderstand them. Now I'm comfortable making the analogies now, and when I've made the analogies to Canadians who have never caught the whiff of communism, of social, of tyranny, of totalitarianism, they say, "Oh, you, how dare you make that analogy? It's offensive." And it's like, I've talked to people who have come from these countries, who've come from the Eastern Bloc countries, who've come from Saudi Arabia, who've come from Hungary, who've come from South America, from these countries, and they know it when they see it. And I've talked to enough now to know that my neighbor in Canada, at one point in time, I remember this, I made an analogy, and he said, David, that's hyperbolic. Not yet. And then about 6 months later, he jokingly said, okay, David, now's the time you can make the comparison. The people who have never had the slightest whiff of it are the ones saying, don't do that. And you're overreacting, yada, yada. The people who have lived through it and fled from it, can see it coming a mile away and have seen it coming from a mile away.
Well, my mom was in denial for a while, and she was in the heat of it and during the revolution, because she was, my dad was put in prison. My mom had to. It was bad because she was part of the revolution. Now, when we came to Canada, it was almost as if she was a little bit in denial for the longest time. Like it was like it's not happening. Like it can't be happening. Like it's just this thing where like, no, I came here. I gave up my entire life to come here to bring my daughter, and it can't be happening again. So we would have these conversations where we would get into arguments because I would be like, Mom, it's happening. Like, wake up, look around you. Things are not good. Right. And this was pre-COVID when I decided to move to Mexico. And she was like, why are you going to Mexico? And I was like, well, I'm seeing some things. Like my husband and I are seeing some things, and we need to get out of here. And she just couldn't understand at the time. And I was like, fascism is creeping in. And she couldn't understand. And then COVID happened and things started to happen. And she started to be like, I think I see what you're seeing now.
It's an amazing thing. I had a similar conversation with my dad. It was in end of March, early April 2020. But to go even further back, my grandfather was the only one of the family of 25. There might have been another person, Esther Freiheter, who fled. My grandfather was the only one of his family, immediate family. We have a picture of all of them who left Poland, and
wow,
and all the others stayed and died. And I asked my dad, on the one hand, why would anyone have stayed there, past the point where they couldn't leave? And he said, well, they thought it would get better. They said it couldn't get much worse. This is only temporary. And then it was the one rebel of a family of ultra religious Jews out in Poland who said, I'm leaving, and left. And I can understand now on both ends how some people who might seem crazy for doing it, seeing it well in advance. I mean, you saw it before COVID. That's more prescient than me. It took me like a couple of weeks into COVID, maybe 4 weeks.
I want to ask you about that. So let's get into it a little bit. But before we do, I'm going to get this massive super chat here from Local Hero 1983. That's incredibly generous. Thank you so much for the 200 pounds. Says, I ended up with a man crush on Viva during his Ottawa live streams last year because of the good work he was doing. It was radio silence from British media at the time. Surprise, surprise.
Keep that up for a second. Yeah, I have a bike crush on that bike. That looks like a nice Trek OCLV carbon with beautiful rims.
Doesn't it look so beautiful? I couldn't tell if it was like what kind of bike it was because I'm not a biker, but that looks.
I could get in close. It's a Trek. The rims are the only thing. They might be zip rims, but that's like a Trek carbon frame race bike. That's beautiful.
Wow.
Also,
I agree. I also agree with Local Hero. I also kind of got a crush on you, but not like that kind of crush. Like man, I freaking admire you for what you did. Just solely because I know how cold Canada gets. Okay, I understand.
I had no idea what I was getting into, and I had no idea it was going to turn into days on end, hours on end. And by the way, just anybody who says they have a man crush, let me assure you, I am extremely annoying. I am, as even my wife says, I'm very hard to deal with sometimes. Not in terms of like being mean. I'm just high energy to the point of irritating everyone around me.
I think this is why we get along so well, because I'm the same way.
COVID. When COVID hit, I feel like an idiot in retrospect. I feel like an idiot.
So many people
for everything. The questions I didn't ask, I feel like an idiot for the information I took for granted. I remember having a Skype call with my brother, who, basically everyone, and they're in the States. Basically, life upended, like careers. Like nobody knew. Everyone was going to be out of a job, like just like that. And I remember,
unless you're essential, and who's deciding who's essential?
Essential, or not a low level employee. But I remember the look of despair in my brother's face, and it was like one of the first not one of the first. I've plenty of them, but it was a memorable anxiety attack where my wife says, "Go up on the roof and look at the horizon," and it was like the darkest day in the world. The world has gone batshit crazy. And then
I remember that because I remember sitting here in Mexico in my yard, and I remember like when everything shut down, and I was just like, I was sitting there, and then there was a moment of silence, and usually there's like dogs barking everywhere here, or like there's birds chirping because we're in the tropics. So at one point, I was sitting in my backyard, and all of a sudden it goes like silent, like dead silent, and I was like, are we in purgatory? Like I had this kind of moment of like, did we all die? Like, are we in purgatory and did everything change? Like, I feel like I'm in a living hell because there's nothing that I could never have imagined something like this happening where we're all locked down in our houses and we're all in prison, like in our own houses. It's just the most absolute craziest thing ever. But
No, no,
I feel you, man. Like I really did feel you on that one. But just
no,
to
no,
go back a little
yeah,
bit though,
please.
just to
Okay.
go back a little bit. Viva, how did you start out? Like, meaning, first of all, were you born in Canada? Like, are you
Born in Canada. So I'm the youngest of 5 kids, born in a wonderful neighborhood called Westmount, which has its own reputation of being like, a wealthy neighborhood. Youngest of 5 kids. My father's a lawyer. My second brother is a lawyer. My sister's a lawyer. My third brother's a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer.
Wow, lawyer family.
A family of lawyers, and they've actually married into lawyers as well. So it got even bigger, if anybody can imagine
great.
that. I'd say totally normal upbringing. I was a problem child, for a very long period of time. I only really settled down after what we call Censorship. So at about 17 years old, I settled down. My 13 to 17, but for the grace of God, could have ended in any number of disastrous ways, like catastrophic disaster ways.
Sure.
So I made it through that bad 4 years. Settled down in Censorship, and then in McGill studied philosophy and really settled down where what made me a problem child was actually made me a valued student in philosophy.
Oh, that's cool.
Did an honors degree in philosophy, 4 years, 1 year in Paris on exchange. After that, went straight to Université Laval to study law. Did my law degree, passed my bar with Nina. This is another memory that I'll never lose. So you write the bar exam. Your entire life comes down to this one stupid exam, and it's a stupid exam. And you find out your grade, and they tell you whether or not you have to redo the bar exam, redo the classes, redo the exam. I'm on a golf course, and my mother calls up and says, I asked her to check. It's like, the results are, can you go online and check? And she goes, oh, she says, you got a 60. And I was like, a 60 is a pass or a fail? And it's like, I didn't remember if 60 was a pass and 59 was the fail, or 60 was the fail and 61 was a pass. And I just couldn't believe it. It was like a joke. I got 60 on the nose, and I'm not embarrassed to say that I didn't do very well on the bar exam, because it's a minefield. It has nothing to do with skill. It's like slap a bunch of soldiers on a field and there's bombs going off. It's not even the fast Squid Games. Not even the fastest is going to win. It's random.
Wow.
I found out I passed. Then I started working at one of Canada's biggest law firms, student work stagiaire, young lawyer. Had my first kid. And had my first midlife crisis. So I said, I can't do this anymore. The schedule's ridiculous. I want to see my kid when my kid's awake. I quit on a Friday afternoon, said I'm going to go back to Censorship and study commercial photography.
Wow, that is a switch.
And at this time, I don't remember. I think we were still living in my parents' basement with my wife and one kid who was sleeping in a very large walk-in closet. And I said, I'm going to go back to commercial photography because I'd rather be poor and happy than making a decent living and miserable. And before I could even get rejected from commercial photography, because something tells me they didn't think I would be serious about it, being like a 33-year-old lawyer, I started getting calls for legal work on my own. I was like, okay, well, I can do them. I can charge, what is a reasonable hour, like $150 an hour. Everybody can afford. I have no overhead. And then before I knew it, within a couple of months, I had more work than I knew what to do with. Had to go get an office because I didn't want service of things in my parents' basement. Built that up into a boutique litigation firm over 7 or 8 years. Yeah, 7 or 8 years. But never felt any better. Never loved any day more than the last day.
Nice.
And at some point, I discovered the internet, discovered viral videos. And
I love how you said discovered the internet.
I just said, no, my wife got me a GoPro in 2014. And I just started making GoPro videos and then posting them to YouTube.
Right.
One of them went super viral. I figured out, holy crap, you can make money with licensing videos, viral videos. And I did that for years, but at the same time as practicing law. And then at one point I said, it was stupid. And if I had known how stupid it was at the time, I probably would have never done it. In debt, don't have money saved up. I think we had 2 kids, if not 3 kids by that time. And I said, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna wind down the litigation side, go work with my buddy who's into marketing. I can use my viral videography to help with marketing. And so I did that and law and YouTube stuff at the same time. Basically stopped active practice in 2016, 2017, but I kept a few files, corporate stuff. And then for 2 years, I was basically putting out a video a day. Not law, nothing related, until I started putting out like a day in the life of a lawyer, prepping for a witness.
Oh, okay.
And when I put out those videos, people were like, hey, that's cool. Do more of that. Like those videos would get 10, 15, 20,000 views consistently.
Right.
Whereas my viral random stuff would, 500 or 500,000, no predictability. And then one day, 2018, I did the breakdown of the Alex Jones deposition, a video that went quasi-viral on YouTube. I got 250,000 views before YouTube removed it. So I discovered my niche, my ikigai. I like law, just I don't like the practice. Analysis, insight, breakdown, I can do it. Video editing, I know how to do that. I spent 2 years putting together like Casey Neistat crappy version vlogs. And so it all just merged right then and there. And then the channel, I dedicated it, specifically to law, more neutral analysis. And
that's around the time I think I found you, because like I've been watching you for a while, like a while before you went into the Trucker Convoy thing. So I found you for a while, was like watching your legal analysis a lot, especially what was going on in Canada, because once I left, I lost connection with that. So I had no idea what was going on in Canada anymore. I was like, oh, Viva's like, he's a really good source into figuring out what's happening in Canada right now. It was nice to have that and it's funny because Viva, when I was in grade 12, I went to law class. Like that was one of my electives that I picked. I got 99% on my final exam, and my law teacher was like, you need to go into law, like you have to become a lawyer. And I was like, hell no, there's no way.
It's useful. Like there's an analogy that I'm reluctant to make because I don't want to look like I'm overhyping what it means to be a lawyer or downplaying what it means to be a soldier, because they're not comparable. Lawyers are useful, yes, etc. Soldiers make sacrifices that ordinary people don't make. The analogy that does exist there is like, to some extent, it's a good tool to have in your arsenal. It's a good, skill set to have.
Yes.
Practicing law in terms of learning how to think critically, how to deal with insults, how to not not emotionalize or not personalize all debate. It's a useful trade to have. It's a useful skill to acquire. But if you do it for too long, it will destroy your soul.
Yeah. And that's how I felt. I was like, I'm an artist, like deep down inside, I was an artist, and I was like, I can't destroy my soul. Like I'm going to destroy myself if I go into law. Well, like I can't do it.
It was from one of the episodes of Dexter where he says, you can only hide your vestigial tail for so long. You could try to suppress the creative individual in you. Like I did it for 10 years. It was a miserable 10 years. Like I sworn in 2007. Internship since 2006, and 12 years. And in the meantime, you had to create, and at some point you can't deny who you are. But by that time, I've gotten 10 years of litigate, 4 years of law knowledge, study, bar school,
the experience, yeah,
and then 10 years of practice where you learn. I learned how to run a business. I started my own practice. You learn how to deal with bar society. You learn how to deal with clients, judges. You learn how to think. You learn how to communicate effectively. And then at some point, if you want to be happy, you have to make a different decision, which may seem absolutely reckless in retrospect, and probably was. But like 2018, I was neutral. I was not giving my personal opinion, but I didn't even appreciate at the time that by not claiming Alex Jones is Satan reincarnate when I did my breakdown of his video, I was committing a cardinal sin of YouTube. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And now I've appreciated.
How could you not? How could you not, Viva? Okay. I mean, it was crazy. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I didn't know, other than what I thought I knew about Alex Jones, conspiracy theorists, he talks like this, and they make fun of him on Howard Stern.
The frog's gay. Yeah.
I knew nothing about him or how controversial he was or why the media made him out to be so controversial. I learned quickly.
Wow. Yeah, I've been following Alex Jones for like basically all my adult life, like since I was 15, 16 years old. I've been through
Can you
Art
imagine?
Bell. I got introduced to
Imagine,
him.
imagine how much more educated you are, informed, not educated. How much more informed you are than people who ignored Alex Jones because they said he's a crazy conspiracy. If you had
Mhm,
listened to Alex Jones and you could distinguish the hyperbole from
mhm.
the facts, because when he says
Yes.
they're turning the frogs gray, it's hyperbolic. That
Mhm.
they're putting chemicals in the frog in the
In
water that's
yes.
affecting the frogs is
Mhm.
factually correct.
That is
When
correct. Yes,
yeah,
that is absolutely correct. But the thing is with Alex Jones is I at the beginning too, and I always said this, I felt like he was a little bit of a tar baby. Like I didn't
what's
think
a
that a
what's a
tar
tar
baby
baby?
is something that it's almost like when you like a person who is intentionally like they have good intentions to wake people up or whatever, but technically what they're doing is doing the opposite. So
Hmm.
a lot of people, like for example, like with Alex Jones, like he has a lot of good points, but his delivery and the way that he explains certain things or the way that he's so extreme about certain things actually causes people to go the opposite, complete the other way. Oh, so like, oh, you say, because he says like the water's turning the frogs gay, he must also be wrong about, Satanists in Hollywood, which we all know that shit exists. Like everybody, if you're,
They may not be Satanists. They're just rampant child.
you know,
I'm trying to,
yeah.
I don't want to get you in
No,
trouble.
no, no.
You know,
I know.
the
Yeah, yeah.
Roman
Holly
Polanskis.
weird. Yeah, Holly weird. That's right. Like we
Uh,
all know Holly weird exists.
it's an interesting thing because once upon a time, uh, I looked at. I'm trying to think of who by way of example. You know, I thought you had to be. If you were polite, people
Mhm.
would listen. If you
Mhm.
stayed polite, people would not demonize you. I
That's a
have
very
now.
Canadian line of thought.
Yeah,
Like
well,
be nice.
now I
Yeah.
can tell you how wrong it is. You know, I don't. It's not going to change my demeanor by and large, but I've realized that not taking a position is not
Mhm,
going to placate anybody.
mhm,
Thinking you're being polite in the manner in which you're expressing an idea is not going to. Maybe it'll change. Maybe it'll. I don't know. I don't think it's going to change any more minds. So,
mhm,
whereas once upon a time, I might have. You know, I think we both appreciated Jones does put things out there in a way that is provocative,
mhm.
that
Yes.
allows his critics to discredit him because they can say verbally, literally, the frogs
Mhm.
aren't turning gay. They don't have any whatever.
Yeah.
But but I think it's, you know, if you want to reach people, politely saying, yeah, you know, that law, Bill
Mhm,
C-16, it might have an impact on you. Nobody listens to that. And so
mhm.
they might discredit the Jordan Petersons of the world for being hyperbolic at the time. But
Right.
when history proves them correct, well, that's how you invest in your future credibility.
Well, and that's funny because that kind of reminds me of Chris Sky a little bit, and he's running for the mayor of Toronto right now.
Oh, yeah.
So he's very like, he's like that too. He's got that energy of like very, just kind of sometimes you think like, oh my God, extreme conspiracy theorist, right? But like I'm a huge fan. Like I think Chris Sky has had so many good points and like just he's been just on point for so many things. But a lot of people think like, oh, this guy's crazy. Like I don't have
Well,
anything to do with this dude. Like,
yeah, but they need oatmeal as food. They don't want like the spicy chips.
mhm.
Yeah, I had Chris Sky. You saw the
I
episode
saw,
with
I
Chris.
watched the interview. It was great.
It's like I'm not allowed saying I like Chris Sky because a little while ago he put out a Facebook post that
Mhm,
questioned the Holocaust, and if I dare say that, I'm willing to move on and, you know, let people live with the mistakes of their youth. Well, I'm
mhm,
the self-hating Jew who,
mhm.
you know, we are forever guilty of our worst act that we did as
Yes.
a young idiot, not understanding necessarily what we were. Although people are going to say he's still defending it to this day, people are unforgiving on other people's ability or inability to even, you know, be able to admit that they made a mistake, even if it's in the past. And the other flip side to that, maybe Chris Sky has learned that there is no point in apologizing to the people who are trying to beat you down into an apology, because
Mhm.
that's just going to be empowering to them. I can understand that. Not how I would act, but I understand that.
Well, and that's the thing. I think what showed me what's going on with Chris Guy's specific situation, similar to Gina Carano's, is that there's certain topics you just can't talk about. Like it's just one of those things where, and I think that's what really shines a light on this is that and it becomes even more interesting to a lot of people is like why can't we talk about this, like it's just one of those things where I mean I was one of those kids like if I was told like not to do something I'd want to do it even more, and I think like that's the thing that I think Chris Guy is one of those kind of people and I think that that's what it really does bring attention to that aspect of
listen,
why can't we talk about this?
well,
Like,
nothing like Kanye West saying what he said about the people who control things and then getting debanked right afterwards. But the funny thing is this: it's insane. But with Chris Sky, I can understand the thought process at the time he did what he did. The problem is, and now I appreciate it, is that we're dealing with people who have weaponized the apology. And so it penalizes people for sincerely apologizing. As an individual, I'm prepared to live with that. I don't think I've made such egregious gaffes, because even back in the day when, in the early stages of the internet, my issue was not abusing the anonymity of the internet. My fear was, being doxxed on the internet. So I never even said things that I thought would get me into trouble just because I was being anonymous. Other people once upon a time would say the provocative things for the sake of being provocative. But now you cannot apologize because the apology is just weaponized and not accepted. But when it comes, sorry, go for it.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
When it comes to the Chris Sky's post in and of itself, I have long been a proponent that like laws prohibiting what they call Holocaust denial are counterproductive, and they are actually exacerbate the very problem they purport to remedy. And I don't have. It's going to sound like when it comes to those types of posts, from even if somebody believes the post, I would rather have the discussion, and it doesn't bother me to let them say it. When people say that allowing that discussion creates risk, creates threat, creates the risk of harm, I don't believe it does. Less so than illegalizing it, because I think that exacerbates all of the problems. And the flip side is there's a spectrum of these types of conspiracy theories, like denials. You have on the one end of the spectrum of the denial, the Holocaust never happened, totally manufactured, totally made up. Okay, I'll let someone say that. That doesn't bother me. I have the photographic evidence that it's not true. The flip side is someone says it wasn't 6 million, it was 5 million. And when you've criminalized both of that, you have inadvertently caught up what could be legitimate historical discussion with the overt stuff. And then you get people saying, well, if they're not the same and they're trying to shut them down like they're the same, then there must be even more truth to the more the less implausible conspiracy theories. And so you end up just making the problem worse. But part of me now thinks that everybody knows that, and that might be part and parcel of the design of these laws in the first place.
Well, and that it's fascinating. It's a fascinating discussion, because I think that you should be able to talk about anything. Like, I don't think speech should be policed. I think you should be able to talk about whatever you want. It doesn't mean that you're correct and you can be called out for being an idiot. But I just don't think that speech should be governed in any form, any shape or form. Now, having said that, and speaking of apologies, I just read, yesterday or the day before, that the Dalai Lama apologized for wanting that kid to suck his tongue. And
that wasn't an apology for words. That was an apology for an action. The apology that I don't think was necessary on this example would be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about Anne Frank and the digital ID system, saying, well, at least in the, in another era, you could hide it in an attic. With digital ID, you want people to hide anywhere. I don't think he should have apologized for that, because the request was not a sincere request for an apology. And everybody knew what he meant by the statement.
Yes.
Dalai Lama. Did you see the video?
Yes.
It's disgusting. He didn't even.
So disturbing.
He didn't pull his tongue back in when the kid was inching in forward. Like, if that kid moved faster and wanted to do it, it would have happened.
Right. And it was just so creepy too. And because afterwards he wanted to hug him, and the kid's just let me go. Like, it was
my tongue. Like it's literally Nicolas Cage from Face Off. Like, it's the thing that the evil villain says. And it's not something you say by accident. That was in the. I think he might just be totally demented, but
I think I think he's like Biden now. He's like dementia ridden. I mean, God knows what the hell.
87 years old. It's a good life. The only thing is, like, the Dalai Lama is a spiritual leader for people, and I want to be respectful of that.
I know, yeah.
But there's a lot of people who say that there's more context that can explain away that outrageously inappropriate "suck my tongue" and
so disturbing.
The audio,
I was so like, oh no.
When I first heard it, I thought someone was translating what he said, but it was him saying that. It was like a little delay, and it's like, "Now, suck my tongue, little boy." It's
I know. I was,
dude,
because at first too, like when I watched the video, I was like, wait, is this like translated? Like, is this like his voiceover? Like, I thought I was hearing a dub, and I'm like, no, that's his voice. Like, and he literally in English is like, suck my tongue, little boy. And I was like, oh no, like why? No.
This is how what's the word, destabilized my information intake is. I saw the apology, and then I immediately had to go find the video. I see the video. I was like, no, this video's a deep fake, and that apology that I just saw is from a parody account. This is like, you can't even trust.
You can't tell.
And so, and then it's like the apology comes from the Twitter handle of the Dalai Lama, but it refers to himself in the third person as His Holiness. Yeah, it was, but it's crazy. You can't even believe your own eyes anymore.
I know, it's absolutely crazy. Now, you brought up Robert Kennedy. He's running for president.
I know.
He announced. What are your thoughts on that?
Can you imagine if the choices were between whether or not it's Trump or DeSantis? I'll say this. I have no real preference, and I'm not getting involved in that. What's the word? Internal dividing conflict.
Your partner Barnes.
Barnes is all in on Trump. Shamelessly slow, but I understand him. He wants Trump, and I understand the argument for Trump. DeSantis is, I don't think, ready for the onslaught of the machine that Trump seems to be uniquely placed to deal with. How many people can put up with what Trump is dealing with without
I don't think anybody could have. I don't know.
So I don't think that DeSantis is ready for it. Setting that aside, if it's between the two of them, it's a win-win. Can you imagine if it's either Trump or DeSantis on one side and RFK Jr. on the other? And they're going to have to find a way to paint Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as a MAGA Republican now, because he would get meaningful support from people who it would be a win-win. But you want predictions?
Yes,
his Anne Frank comment is going to come back up because nobody ever, that apology fell on deaf ears.
That is never going to, he's never going to live that down. But that's the thing though. Like he's also been one of the only vocal voices about COVID and about the mishandling of COVID and all of this stuff. I mean, his book about Fauci, I mean, all the stuff. There's a lot to be unpacked with Robert F. Kennedy. And I think that he is one of the people who's going to shine a light on the Biden administration because he is running under the Democratic ticket. Yep. So if anything, I think some of the very bad mishandling of things, especially with regards to COVID, will come to light with that, but I'm not sure.
Can you imagine having a good candidate? Like, and it's not to set aside Trump. Who are the other Republicans? Ted Cruz. Like, they're not bad people, but they're just like, you have 380 million
a lot of
people.
rhinos.
These are the best. I'm thinking Canadian politics. Think the Democrat candidates. Who could they possibly be? Joe Biden, who, no comment. Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom. But for the fact that I'm told he's actually a nice person, he exudes creepiness and evil. That's actually what I told the person who said that he's actually quite nice. I said he exudes evil, but forget the evil and whatever. Incompetence. Proven incompetence, proven partisan hackery, proven elitism and just flavor of the day politics and hypocrisy. Can you imagine having RFK Jr., a man who himself is injured, jab injured, which his interest in that subject, was an environmentalist, an environmental lawyer who fought the good fight and was the Democrats' darling until they decided he was no longer their darling. Same thing with Trump, oddly enough. Can you imagine having a decent, quality candidate who can speak well, who I don't think he has the disgusting baggage that Joe Biden has. I don't think he has the awful personality baggage that Kamala Harris has. And he certainly doesn't have the incompetent governmental official baggage and hypocrisy that Gavin Newsom has. Can you imagine having a remotely competent person in government? It's incredible.
It's unimaginable almost. But also, I think that's the other thing is that I think what he's doing is strategic in a sense of bringing the, like I said, the attention to the Biden administration as with regards to the fact that they are technically not a Democratic Party in a sense that they are the neocons. They're the new face of the neocons. And I think what he wants to do is expose that as well, because we know how much he's against the neocons. So it's just really interesting to kind of see this lifelong Democrat. He is a Kennedy. I mean, the Kennedys were Democrats. So it's just one of those things where, I mean, I think his name carries a lot of weight with old school Democrats that are probably, interested in having a leadership change and not having a geriatric in the office anymore. I mean, it's just,
a perverted geriatric. But can you like JFK, the JFK, JFK
Yeah.
today would be an extreme MAGA Republican.
Oh
I mean,
yeah, 100%.
I don't know. I say I don't know what's happened to the Liberal Party. I'm new to American politics. I'm new to political consciousness. But when the Democrats and the Liberals now are literally the party espousing anti-science while proclaiming follow the science, the most inhumane policies. The Schmorschen debate is nuanced, and some people on my side, some people don't like. Some people don't like the statement that 90% of people agree that there's a window. We just have to agree on that window. Some people are absolutists on one end and the other, and I would certainly prefer the absolutists on the life is life as opposed to the absolutists who say whenever a woman wants. But 90% of the people agree there's a window. We just have to find
There's a window. Yeah,
but when you are part of a party that actively promotes late-term schmortions, that puberty blockers for kids, that men should compete in sports with women, and you call yourselves liberal, Democrat, progressives. I mean, the party has become an oppressive, tyrannical, authoritarian cult. Now, people say, well, what about the Republicans? There seems to be a lot more discourse. I should
nuance. At least some nuance, yeah.
And fewer litmus tests on the conservative side. There's much more disagreement among conservatives, which might be, part of its problem. There's unity on the litmus tests of the Democrat Party, and if you dare defy them, well, then you're a MAGA Republican, Tulsi Gabbard.
And that's actually one of my problems with what's going on with Barnes. I love you, Robert. If you're watching, I love you, but I just don't understand the extremist. Not that Robert's an extremist, but the extreme aspect of the disagreement within the party, you need to unite. If you want to beat those bad guys, at some level, the Republicans need to unite because they're united. They're united to take you guys down at all costs. And if you don't unite, you're going to just lose.
Not for obvious reasons. I'm more sympathetic to Barnes's preference of Trump and not disdain, but rather, not disdain. That's not the right word at all. But skepticism to DeSantis. Yes. I know that Barnes likes DeSantis.
Yes.
And he just thinks it's not his time. It's too early. And Trump is the only person that can do it. And he's fighting tooth and nail to try to convince others of that. But I am flabbergasted by the level of divisive infighting on social media. Part of me really genuinely wonders whether or not this is like the modern iteration of COINTELPRO. Like, not just...
I think about that.
Once you know these things, like you can't not see them. And so it's not because it's not irrational or like totally conspiratorial to think it's possible today. It's happened in the past and there's certain players that some people might say like they're fighting too hard to create division within the conservative side, but whatever. The fight will be over when there's what do they call them? Not the nominee. Whatever, the person when the Republicans pick a person after the primaries.
Okay, yeah.
The infighting will be over, but just hope that people don't say things that they can't take back. But it might be too late.
You know what though, the infighting is never like at that level. I don't think is going to be over because there's always infighting, especially within the YouTube sphere. I've noticed there's always some sort of infighting with regards to conservatives, and it's just I can't I'm like you always. You guys got to focus on your message, focus on what is your end result, where do you want to get to, and that should be all of your focuses. Stop infighting and trying to get each other. For example, one of the things that came up recently was the idea that I'm sure you've heard of this individual, Dylan Mulvaney, and how this person's just all over the place with regards to getting endorsements from Bud Light and all of these different companies. And you have Matt Walsh, come out and say things like, well, because of the Republicans' constant exposure of this guy, now people know, and now they stop buying Bud Light, and now they've stopped supporting those companies that are endorsing him. And it's because of our constant, kind of badgering people to figure out that this guy's a ridiculous clown. But I came to a point where at some point on Twitter, I was just like, I can't look at this guy's face anymore. Like, I
Well,
just can't do it.
True, but that's the point of saturation. You have to get there, and until you get to the point of saturation, shining a spotlight on it is very relevant and useful.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of.
But now other Republicans are calling Matt Walsh out and being like, you guys are too extreme. You're doing this too much. And I'm like,
when they got mad at Matt Walsh for what he said about Dylan Mulvaney, that he'll never be what he aspires to be, and everyone's like, that's very mean. I mean, yeah. So they called him mean, and the funny thing is, I said like
the mean thing.
People called him mean. Nobody said he was wrong, and the ultimate irony, and this is what some people may or may not truly appreciate, is that even those people who purport to be celebrating Dylan Mulvaney, they're mocking him. It is rubbernecking at a car accident on a highway, and they cloak it in benevolence, but they are exploiting of what they ultimately know is something of a show to exploit in the first place. But they get to make themselves feel good while celebrating it, even though they deep down fundamentally are, finding the mockery of the situation to be exploitable economically, social media wise. But the underlying premise is one that everybody understands. This is not a celebration of freedom. This is ultimately a celebration of I have to weigh my words. It's a celebration of exploiting an individual. And
I think that too, Viva, because I think, and that's something I kind of quote tweeted Matt Walsh with, because I'm at a point where I think you don't hate the player, hate the game. Because if it wasn't going to be Dylan Mulvaney, it was going to be someone else, and that's the system that we've created. And I think that that's the bottom lines, that we have to really start addressing what is going on with the system and what we've allowed to happen. No, go ahead.
The system's always been this way. Like the National Enquirer always went after these odd stories.
Yeah.
What's truly fascinating is just how exploitive everybody is about it. And it's like even the people who purport to support Dylan Mulvaney don't understand that this story, this contagion, is being co-opted by big business, not because they believe in anything except for the fact that it can be temporarily exploited until it can't anymore. And so people say, stop giving him attention, he'll go away. No, maybe, but probably not, because there will be people.
I think he'll just be replaced. Yeah, he's a mascot. That's what he is, a mascot for the system, and he's just going to be replaced. Once he gets no more attention, there's going to be another one.
Do you know what the problem is? And this is what I genuinely think makes those who are exploiting him benevolently truly callous. He will fade away one day. He will either go back to the life of a gay man, which is what he was before,
I think he will. Yes.
Or worse. And then the media could say, we exploited this man's fragility for the longest period of time, much like they do with artists, like Jim Morrison, John Belushi. Exploit them for as long as they can. They meet a tragic demise. They get to exploit that as well, and then they just find their new pigeon.
Yes, and
that's what's going to happen with a lot of these folks. But it's the era of the madness of this situation. It's whether or not it's reached peak contagion, we're getting there.
I think we're getting there, definitely. I mean, every day.
The lawsuits will start flying. The detransitioners, if we're going to call them that, the Chloe Coles, the Tulip Richies, are going to start coming out in full force. And people are going to look back on this madness in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and ask the same questions they asked about other eras where certain medical interventions were not just accepted but promoted in a hysteria, only for a generation later to say, what the hell were you thinking? I thought humans were smart.
Exactly. And so let's bring it a little back to your kind of being blackpilled about COVID in Canada, and just then deciding to go out and seeing what's going on with the Trucker Convoy and things like that. Tell me a little bit more about that experience, and then what made you decide to finally leave Canada?
When COVID hit, I'm neurotic, just in case anybody didn't know. Neurotic, OCD. I was a germaphobe once upon a time as well. Still am in my own way. When COVID hits, I mean, so much of a germaphobe, by the way, that in the December before COVID, I got such a wild flu, a massively awful flu, like
You got
103.
COVID. You probably got COVID.
And that's what I say. But then apparently that was a conspiracy theory to suggest that. I was Googling meningitis because before I got sick, I hacked a minnow out of the ice, thawed it out, and then used it as a bait. And I'm like, I just unleashed some virus from this fish, and now I'm dying. I was so sick for so long that I thought I was literally dying. I was Googling all sorts of things.
Oh no.
But then so then when COVID hit, I'm a bit of a head case, and I can acknowledge it. For the first 2 weeks, it was cataclysmic for me. Like the world was doomed. It was going to be The Walking Dead. People were going to be walking the streets with shotguns, like stealing from, like in my head, doomsday had already played out. When the kids would come in the house and they wouldn't wash their hands after, I mean, constant perpetual anxiety from which covered, which I can now in retrospect say what an idiot I was, but there's still people living in that fear.
Oh yes.
I think it lasted for the first 2 weeks. We were locked down. We were making the best of it. I was making daily videos, like balancing golf balls, making fun, funny, like social distancing, hopscotch outside, making the best of it with family. I think the moment, I have to remember, the moment where I realized this is the most dumbest shit on earth is when they padlocked closed the outdoor dog run. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And I think that was then the BLM riots hit. I have this all timelined because I was having a fight with my former best friend or former good friend on Facebook messages. And I was like, right from about 2 weeks in, I was like, so things don't make sense. I got some questions. And this otherwise intelligent human being was like, trust the experts, just, they know what they're doing. And then I did the timeline, like dog runs doesn't make sense. Locking up things outside doesn't make sense. Justifying BLM protests, but not presidential rallies doesn't make sense. I mean, so I was thoroughly into the black pill, I'd say by the late spring, early summer 2020. But that was that. If I thought I was black pilled then,
I don't remember when this fits on the timeline, but there was also that, like, I think that woke a lot of people up when Trudeau was like, you can't travel between provinces. And then he went from Quebec to Montreal.
It was he went from Ontario to his cottage in Quebec.
That's right.
Doug Ford, you can't visit family. Can you imagine when I was long gone before they told us we can't visit family. Then he meets with his daughters. That's right. That nincompoop from the Liberal Party, I don't remember who he was, pre-recording a video saying we have to celebrate Christmas differently this year. What publishes it while he's in St. Bart's?
Yeah, he went away. I remember that.
But I, like, in as much as I thought I was black-pilled and smart for catching on early enough, meanwhile I still went out and got 2 of those jibby jabs. Had I known, it's a wild thing. I say now, had I known then what I know now, I definitely would not have done it because I would have been too scared of dying of myocarditis. But had I not done then what I did then, for whatever the reasons I did it then, and I remember the reasons, I literally wouldn't be here now. But
you had to do it there because in Canada you wouldn't have been able to do anything else.
I didn't do anything else that required vaccination. I never showed a vaccine passport, but for that one time I went bowling because I got to the bowling alley with 4 kids and they said, "Show me your papers," and I was like, "Wow, fucking kid!" I'm sorry.
No, you can swear here. You're fine.
Enraged. I said, "You got to be effing kidding me! There's nobody here." And like, I had vowed that I would never show my vaccine. I didn't get the passport or download the app, but I had the papers. I'm with 4 kids and my crowd, some of the people in my crowd were like, you should have showed them and showed them you had principle and not gone. I was like, I'm with a 5-year-old kid. That's not principle.
That's not when you make a scene.
And so that was the only time, but I didn't do it for that reason. I literally, in as weak as it might be, I did it so that some people around me would not be nervous. And not within my immediate family, not within my 4 walls of our house. And I did it because I was running for office, and I liked to play with. I'm going to channel the Dalai Lama. I would go to the park across my street and play with the kids in the daycare when my kid was at the daycare, and it became a routine. So when I'd see them out there, I'd come out with a fossil. And Lord knows if the radical right-wing anti-vaxxer with the YouTube channel who complains about the government, if he were to infect a kid in a daycare and kill a kid in daycare, and even if I didn't think it would do anything, at least they wouldn't be able to say that about me. Maybe that makes me empowered. Or maybe it's just my own neuroses as to what I have to deal with in terms of what I would feel guilty about. If I were to have communicated the virus to a kid and that kid died, not set aside all statistics, I might never forgive myself. If I get injured from deciding to do that, I'll forgive myself. So all that, but man, I even that being said, at the time, I wouldn't have done it had I known then what I know now,
But
because I
let
would
me
have been too
ask you
scared.
this though. Let me ask you this though. Even though you claim you were neurotic, or you claim you had certain situations, even then, did you ever make other people feel guilty for not doing it?
Absolutely. I can safely say this. I vehemently opposed any vaccine mandate, and not only never shamed anybody. I was enraged by people who were, Nina. I never want to disclose anything that would allow anyone to be identified. But bottom line, I had a friend from our mutual kids' school
Mm-hmm.
who asked if my kids. There was a question as to whether or not someone was vaccinated before carpooling, and I cannot tell you the degree of rage that I had when someone asked that question. I did what I did not because I expected anybody else to do it. It was to quell my own neuroses, and never for one day and never for 1 second supported compelled vaccination, vaccine mandates. I never supported any of this inhumane abuse of human beings
And power. Yeah.
But then I also had to be sympathetic, because when the vaccine passports rolled out in Quebec, and I went to Canadian Tire to show, just to document this, and also to show how discriminatory it was, because oddly enough, the only family that I saw that couldn't get into Canadian Tire were Black, and we know the statistics of vaccination stats, whatever. I couldn't also be the person who was going to humiliate, berate employees for doing their job because they can't afford to lose their job.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I never.
That's very respectable to me, because that's kind of where I stood as well. Like I've always been like, look, I don't care what you do. Like, that's the idea of body autonomy anyway. Like that was the whole point. Or you're supposed to be able to have body autonomy. And that's why I always laugh when the leftists are always talking about, abortion this, abortion that. But when it comes to, actual body autonomy, like the other day I was reading this like tweet from Biden being like, oh, we're going to provide for anyone that wants to get an abortion, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, unless they're, decided not to get vaccinated, right? Because I mean, otherwise there was no logic when it came to that kind of thing. And so I was always against, mandated masking, mandated vaccinations, whatever, all the mandates. I was against it. But if you want to do it, go ahead and do it. Like nobody cares. If you want to go put a mask on your face in the middle of the beach in Cancun, which people do, which is really freaking weird. I saw people in the ocean, Viva, with the masks on their faces, and I'm just like,
I thought I saw that also, but you might. It turned out to be a snorkel, a weird type of snorkel that looked like a face mask. But the just to also, so we can clarify for anybody who wants to say, how can you be anti-vaccine mandates but then also pro-abortion laws to some extent? The entire distinction of the debate is that it's not just the woman. And this is regardless of how you feel about it. It's not just the woman's body. That's the whole issue. If it were just the woman's body or just the man's body, do whatever you want to your body as an adult. The whole argument on abortion laws is that it's not just the woman's body. It involves another body, another autonomous being. When it comes to vaccine mandates, it's just your body. But then they say, but you could infect somebody else. Well, once we knew that the vaccine didn't prevent transmission, that argument failed. Oh, but then it was all, and then Black Pill, they knew
circular logic or whatever.
It's like, well, you're less likely to transmit it. They never tested for transmissibility. How do you make that statement, you liars? So it was just a question of control. That flagrant hypocrite of a man. I've never hated a man as much as Justin Trudeau, but I try to hold back the hatred because it's not a healthy thing.
No, it's not good for your soul. It's not good for your soul.
And I remember one kid in elementary school, I hated him because he was a bully. I hated him. And I remember thinking about him at night when I would go to bed and say, I hate that person. Justin Trudeau is probably among the most awful people on the face of the earth. He comes out and says, my body, my choice. We'll offer to the women who are now, can't get an abortion in the States. We'll help you out. My body, my choice, except for the women who don't want to get vaccinated. Then it's their body, your choice. It's just the hypocrisy. It doesn't go both ways, because it's not inconsistent to say I'm anti-vaccine mandate and also pro-abortion, what's the word I'm looking for? Pro-abortion laws. To some extent, that's not inconsistent. But to say, well, my body, my choice when it comes to abortion, but vaccine mandates, that makes you a fundamental, illogical hypocrite.
Yep. And now, so when did you decide that you need to get out of Canada?
So, in the progression of the black pill, let me see here. So we get into December 2020 when the government is telling us to celebrate Christmas differently, to not go to church. Like I think they were like shut. I forget the timeline; it gets lumped together. But I said when they were I went off the deep end when they said you can't celebrate Christmas with your family. Gatherings are limited to 10. Oh, that's right. They shut down restaurants on it was New Year's Eve. It was like they shut down restaurants in Quebec like the day before New Year's Eve or Christmas Day. I forget which. When they started telling people who they could have and not have in their houses and how they could celebrate the holidays, and I had elderly people who said, I would rather die than spend Christmas alone, because
so
what the
many
hell is
people said
yeah,
that. So many people said that.
Oh, I'm alive, alone in a nursing home or in some 1.5 studio apartment. What the hell's the purpose of life if you're not living it? That's when I started getting very not angry, because I don't get angry, but that's when I realized this is bad and this is getting worse. And I said I could foresee a time when, if it keeps getting worse, there's going to be no Canada to leave. It's going to be a prison to escape from. And I said, if ever I have to leave Canada, if ever I have to run from Canada, I know people are going to call me a coward. I know people are going to call me all sorts of names. Oddly enough, not as many as I thought did, because I think people saw and see the effort that I still put in. And I haven't left Canada. I'm still a Canadian citizen. I'm on a temporary visa, and we'll see what the future holds. But I said, before I run from Canada, I'm going to run for Canada. And I said, I've been against these bullshit mandates from the beginning. This has been a power grab. This has been tyrannical. This has been ushering in the most historically awful fascism you can imagine. I said, if I have to run from this, I'm going to run for it first. And if people don't want to vote for that which is freedom, true constitutional freedom and respect of our Charter of Rights, if they don't vote for that, enjoy what you vote for. And so I ran for office for the People's Party of Canada. That was September 2021. It was among the most worthwhile experiences of my life. Not sure I'd repeat it again, but if I do, I might. I ran. I got my ass handed to me, because Westmount, NDG, goes liberal as it has gone for 3 decades. 50+% of Westmount, you could put a dog on the liberal thingy, on the liberal. What's the word? Ballot on the liberal ballot.
Oh, yeah.
People will vote for. You'll get a dog as your representative.
Yeah, as long as it's blue. Yeah.
No, for us it's red. Actually,
that's right.
Red liberals. But you could run a corpse and they would get elected. But I got to debate. I got to shed my reluctance of sharing my opinion with the world. People might not appreciate. Good boy Viva here didn't always express his personal opinion quite so vocally. When I said, if I'm running for office, I finally get to say what I think unapologetically. Vaccine mandates are bullcrap. A lot of stuff, bullcrap. And we tripled the vote for the PPC in my riding. So I got 1,500 votes, up from 400 and change in the previous election. I got to debate and tell Mark Garneau, who won, what I thought to his face, and his political, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. I got to give interviews on the CBC. I got to discover the corruption of the CBC in Canada.
That was crazy. I saw all of that go down too. That was nuts.
For those who don't know, the CBC and daytime radio, they spend all their time demeaning and defaming Maxime Bernier and the People's Party of Canada, radicals, extremists. I was like, you guys, you talk big when nobody's there. Why don't you invite Maxime or myself on? And so the CBC said, okay, we'll do an interview. Can you get Maxime? I said, he's not available. Do me. I did an interview with the guy. I'm going to forget his name. It doesn't really matter. Suffice to say, the interview didn't go, I don't think, the way they wanted. And so they ran the interview at 7:00 in the morning on Thursday. This is before the Monday or Tuesday election. And then that's it. And I was like, hey guys, and I keep going to their website, refresh, where's this interview? When's it being uploaded? They didn't upload the interview to the website. I was like, they're uploading other interviews. And I was like, if CBC actually had to work for ratings and had to work for clicks, they would post that interview.
Yes, of course.
I'm going to try to find it. And I was like, hey guys, when's it? Oh, we're not uploading. I said, finally on Sunday before the Monday of the vote, they finally upload the interview. And I share it around to as many people as I can. And like, yeah, that was a damn good interview. And,
I was retweeting it too. I really was rooting for you. Like, you have no idea, man. I was in every chat. nonstop, just because I felt so disconnected. And for the longest time, I felt like, where are the Canadians at? Because I know Canadians have courage, and I know we can wreck shit. I know because when we lost that hockey game, game 7,
Oh yeah.
in Vancouver, I know that the rage, the Canadian rage is there. It just, you need to tap into it. And I was like, as soon as they do something to hockey, I think the Canadians are going to say something.
Oh well, amazing how they broke the rules for hockey, and they broke the rules for the arenas. It's
for everything. It was so crazy, man. It was
none of
so
it made
crazy.
sense. But no, so I got to see the CBC corruption. I got to see how I could go knock on doors and shake hands on the street and put up my billboards and I never met a bloody soul who liked Justin Trudeau. And yet CBC controls the ears,
Yep.
CTV, CJAD with their CJAD 800. Toxic hatred is what comes out of that radio station. They've all blocked me on Twitter, but toxic hatred from daytime radio. I saw how the corruption truly works when the daytime radio, when digital media is dependent on these COVID dollars, so they have to run the narrative. The print media is bought off. CBC, Radio-Canada bought off. Radio bought off through COVID ads. I mean, I saw the insidious corruption, and my only lingering black pill is I don't know if Canada is too far gone. When I know good people, educated people, the people who are supposed to be the cream of the crop of social society, espousing beliefs that are just utter ignorance, utterly ill-informed in a material substantive manner, where you tell them the truth and they say that's too far-fetched to be true. When those people are saying I'm okay with what's going on here, I don't know what hope there is. So
yeah, and it's really funny that you say that, because these are discussions that I had with my mother, because my mom's still there. And she was telling me, especially in very educated circles that she talks to, a lot of authors, a lot of writers, and a lot of different kind of people that are super educated, like you said, were following along, not questioning anything, like philosophers, people who should be questioning things, like people who you would think would be questioning things. And it's so funny, because I think I came to the realization that the Canadian education system actually indoctrinated the people. So those educated people that we thought were completely they should be questioning these things, they were actually getting indoctrinated into understanding that the system is what's correct, and the system is what you have to follow, because otherwise then you are not you're othered, you know what I mean?
There is that, where like it's the what's the word, it's another word for value, that compliance and cowardice became valorized, became became virtues and not vices.
Yes.
And it illustrates the degree to which the entire system is captured. Like the legal system, the medical profession, education, it's captured to the extent that you can't, if you do speak out about it, and if you do question official narratives, if you do say the horrible thing that children can't consent to puberty blockers, you get your licensure bodies on you. If you criticize the government, in my entire career of law, active practice, and when you're a solo practitioner, you take on hard cases, you take on hard clients. I never had a complaint, period. The only time I got a complaint, like a bona fide complaint, was because of a video that I put out that someone didn't like the way I was talking about Supreme Leader François Legault. And I get an anonymous, it wasn't actually anonymous, a non-client filing a complaint because they didn't like a video that I put out. I got another complaint. They didn't go past any preliminary stages because someone didn't like the tweet that I put out about Justin Trudeau shut down the country for 40,000 COVID deaths, and in 2021 euthanized or killed 10,000 Canadians. And so I get a call from the bar. Someone complained about your tweets, and Trudeau didn't kill anybody. I was like, oh, you mean because someone thinks that I said Trudeau killed them with his bare hands, like physically?
Right.
Like, oh, you'd like me to tweet out a clarification that I wasn't making a factually incorrect statement, that Trudeau first-handedly did this? And he said, yeah, that would help. So I put out a tweet. It's like, yeah, about that tweet and someone who filed an anonymous complaint, I was not suggesting that Justin Trudeau single-handedly killed 10,000 Canadians at an hour a person. That would have taken more than a year. But it's like when you speak out vocally, you get the hammer, and it teaches others, just go along, you have a good job, you have a good practice, and keep subsidizing the people that are there to actually keep your thought in check. That is beautiful right there.
I made that. That's my art. This was made at the time when COVID was happening, and I called him Supreme Leader Trudeau as well. And I was like, he's literally like the Supreme Leader. This is crazy. So I made him into it.
It's beautiful. Like, you could do a version with Francois Legault, the Premier of Quebec. But can you imagine?
Okay.
I was going to buy a billboard during the last provincial elections to say François Legault est un tyran, François Legault is a tyrant. I was going to do it, but then I didn't want anybody accusing, I'm still a Canadian citizen, but accusing someone residing in Florida of buying political ads in Quebec. But they re-elected the tyrant, the guy who put us under curfew for 5.5 months, a curfew which the courts deemed did not violate our charter rights. Curfew.
God. Drove me absolutely insane.
They acknowledged that curfews, there's no scientific evidence to suggest that curfews can combat a virus, but it will remind everyone how serious the situation is. They told it, they destroyed every aspect of personal life, civil society, and they re-elected him and gave him more seats. I mean, that does not leave me with any hope for the province of Quebec. So, and then of the other laws, like Bill 15 in Quebec, which eliminated parental supremacy from the Youth Protection Act, the government is taking control over every micro aspect of individual citizen life. And some people would rather allow someone else to tell them to make the mistake than to assume responsibility for their own actions. And it is, I don't know what the white pill is just yet. After enough people suffer under this, people will wake up. That's not a white pill.
Sometimes you need it though. But that's the thing. Sometimes it's not a white pill at all, but sometimes you need that shock. You had it. It's basically like you need to go through that kind of like metamorphosis in order to do that. Now, I'm going to address this real quick because a lot of people think this about women in Canada, okay? A lot of people think that
they meant Trudeau, not me.
Trudeau,
okay,
yeah.
Fine, sorry. Sorry,
that we women elected Trudeau because he was cute. Look, maybe that's true for some women, but it wasn't true for me. Mind you, I did think he was cute, yes, because he was at the time. He was much cuter than he is now at the time, okay? But I agreed with the policies of the party at the time, and I just wanted Harper out. That was the only reason that I voted for that party. It was a terrible mistake. Look,
I voted for Trudeau as well once.
Yeah, me too. Once.
I voted for François Legault as well. Well, I should say twice. The first and the last time. But people who say like the whole rumor, the whole myth of, and I just had this thought, and it might be an original thought. The whole myth of how cute Trudeau is was propagated by the media. So I don't think I know very many people on a personal level who was saying how dreamy he was. It was always the media saying cute socks, nice hairdo, facial hair. It was the media that he effectively had bought out already, but also the media that built him up. So I don't really think that many people thought he was that dreamy and that charismatic. He's always been a bumbling buffoon, but at one point in time, he said the right stuff when he was talking about gun rights back in the day. We're a Canadian culture. We like guns. We like going hunting. Yes. We're a Canadian culture. We believe in freedom. Yes. He said the right things when it was popular to get elected. And then he said, the right things now.
And that he woke me up to that though, because I believed a lot of the stuff he said. And I was for that. Just like a lot of people were for Obama, they were like, oh, Obama's going to be the next change, the next black president. A lot of people don't like the fact that they voted for him now, but it's a hindsight thing. And what happened is, it woke me up to career politicians, because when you're a career politician, you say a lot of things just to say a lot of things to get elected. And it reminded me of that guy that you had a fight with recently, the conservative leader dude. I forget what his name is right now.
Oh, Pierre Poilievre.
Yes, because when he came on the scene and everyone was like just gaga, like, oh, this guy's the next thing. Like he's saying all the right things. We got to elect this guy as the conservative leader now. And like all of a sudden I was just like, he's really reminding me of all the things that Trudeau was saying at the time.
The one good thing is, my grandmother always said to be a good liar, you have to have a good memory. And to be inconsistent, like I'm too nervous about being inconsistent that it serves me well, because you stick to principles and not to what is the flavor of the day. I always said that about Pierre. I said he's a smart guy. He speaks well, and he scored some points against Justin Trudeau during the We Charity investigations. But I said from the beginning he might be a good candidate, but he was late to the game on a number of things. Now I don't hold that against people in general because I was later to the game than some other people, so it's not a fair standard. But I said from the beginning, he jumps on the bandwagon when it's popular to do so, and then jumps off of it when it's popular to do so, like he did with the Trucker Convoy. Yes. And so I've been redeemed in my skepticism of Poilievre, but he still might be, he's still better than Trudeau, but that's like saying
but that's like saying Trudeau was better than Harper at the time.
Well, yeah, I'm not, you might just be wrong on that, but it's more like saying that curdled milk is better than feces. I mean, yeah, but we're dealing with curdled milk or feces. I don't know enough about Harper to even remember, but I won't defend him. But you might have been wrong.
No, well, I mean, at least his what's it called? Not domestic policies, his
foreign policies.
Foreign policies. Thank you. His foreign policies. Now, speaking of foreign policies and just foreign countries in general, now you moved to the U.S.,
the sunny free state of Florida for at least 3 years.
Are you happy?
I miss winter. I'll explain some internal dilemma. Like people think that when they say Viva's a coward and he fled his country, you think you're not telling me anything that I haven't said to myself repeatedly. Part of me says, whether or not I could stay and fight the more effective fight internally, I don't think I could. Canada and Quebec in particular was no longer a healthy, but above all else, a safe place in my mind to raise kids. When my kid was luckily just under that threshold for the vaccine passport, and I saw the shit that they were doing, like telling a 13-year-old kid who's not vaccinated they can't try out for soccer. I was like, this doesn't build strength. And people say kids are resilient. No, kids get traumatized. This will traumatize kids and to some extent. It might, you learn through trauma, yes. But if you're talking about living a healthy life and raising a family in a healthy environment, watching people fight in a second cup coffee line because they're too close to each other is not a healthy life. Right. Legislatively, it's only going to be a matter of time before Canada is going to literally crack down on what I actually do for a life.
Right.
But
they already tried to hit the bank accounts.
They hit the bank accounts. They tried to take down news as disinformation. They are going to they're going to use the full force of the captured regime against all ideological adversaries. And I genuinely think even the people who don't leave probably want to. And what I feel guilty about is that it's not something that everybody can do. And so I say, like, vote with your feet, but it's not something that everybody can do. Some people are just too tied down in terms of job, in terms of family, in terms of fear, in terms of finances. But if anybody thinks like selling everything and packing it into a trailer and getting, do it, that's flipping exhilarating and terrifying.
It is. I've done it. I've literally done it.
You did it before, like in circumstances where it might even be less understandable. Like nobody's going to blame somebody for saying.
My husband told me at the time, he's like, Nina, and I always remember this. He's like, Nina, do you want the universe to make the choice for you, or do you want to make the choice yourself? Yeah. Because at some point, you'll come face to face with that fact, and you don't want them to make the choice for you.
Or you've realized you want to make the choice and it's no longer an option.
It's too late. Yeah.
It's like,
and that brings me to my next question. So for the Canadians out there that are really considering moving out of Canada, and because I also talked about this with Legal Mindset. I don't know if you know who that is, Andrew, Legal Mindset, because he recently made a channel about moving to Asia, and it's apparently doing really well. And he was telling me that a lot of people that hit him up about moving out there are Canadians. Like majority of Canadians are hitting up. I think that there's a mass exodus happening right now, or basically kind of wanting to happen.
No, there is, and it's the same type of mass exodus that always happens that results in a brain drain and an economic strain on a country that's gone full totalitarian. And it's the cataclysmic sequence of events. The people who can leave, and the people who can't stay there to get continually exploited and squeezed by the government, and it results in the collapse of society. But the amount of emails and requests, like, what did I do? I had my immigration lawyer on to explain all of the options. But no, I think it's the biggest exodus from Canada in the last 25 years. Trudeau likes to pretend immigrants are coming to Canada. I think those are only the ones that he's opened up the border at the Roxham border, the Roxham crossing. The people are leaving Canada. So some of the, it's anecdotal, but I've known immigrants who came from East Bloc countries that have gone back because they're so upset with what they see going on in Canada.
Because they're like, we might as well be with our families. So why are we out here if it's changing to become communist? So why am I, I get that. So my question to you was like, well, what would your suggestion be? How would you help the people that want to get out? Like what is your
contact an immigration lawyer and see the ways to do it. There's ways to do it. There's legal ways and there's not legal ways. And I'd never suggest anything not legal.
Talk about that. Yeah.
No. It's like you go and you overstay a visa, or you do something you're not allowed to do on a visa. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can get out for 6 months on a vacation visa, but you got to come back.
That's what I used to do.
No, that's it. You get 6 months. But stability for families is a. No, consult an attorney and see what the options are. There's a number of visa options, but the bottom line, am I happier? I'm freer, and to that extent, like I'm away. I've uprooted everything I ever knew of my life. I was born and raised in Montreal. I've lived my entire life in Canada. I never in my entire life thought this would have to be an option to stay free and to be able to continue just to live a free life. But Florida is. It has its own problems. Every place has its problems. Politically, there is a cost and there is a value of freedom, and every place has its own issues. But Canada is on a downward spiral and like past the event horizon of the black hole that is socialism, authoritarianism, totalitarian, whatever you want to call it. So I'll continue being as active and proactive of a voice as I can here and shedding some light on it, because some people just don't even know. There are people who don't even know that Justin Trudeau has been twice convicted of ethics breaches. There are people who don't understand what Bill C-11 is. There's people who don't understand what Bill C-16 is, Bill C-4, the one that criminalized conversion therapy. Conversion therapy. Only one-way conversion therapy. There are Canadians who don't know that, and they will never know it because all they do is watch CBC News.
Yeah.
While yesterday Trudeau had one of the most controversial stories come out ever, the entire board of directors and the CEO of his father's Trudeau Foundation resigning because of those Chinese Communist Party.
That was insane. I saw that.
You know what story was acutely not on the front page of CBC or Radio-Canada? Radio-Canada. Canadian content subsidized by the government dollars to the tune of $1.2 billion. Their front story, the abortion pill debate in the United States. CBC, their number one story was a series that they're promoting for themselves. The number two story was something in Calgary. The number three story, Brittany Griner's memoir. Canadian content, CBC, Brittany Griner's memoir about the horrors of being in a Russian prison.
Oh, I saw your tweet about that. That was insane to me. And then, of course, I saw this too, like literally on the same day. And I was like, it's so funny that Trudeau and the Canadian government constantly wants to talk about ban guns, ban guns, ban guns. And then here they are, like, just here's all the guns to the Ukraine.
The guns are bad. Guns are bad. I mean, it's the same hypocrisy in the States. Guns are bad. You don't need them. Borders are bad. Open them up. Here are guns. Ukraine, defend your borders. I mean, there's no. I said people like to say it's not hypocrisy. It's hierarchy. It's not black pilled yet, but it's not hierarchy. It's lawlessness. It's just absolute lawlessness, because you don't have a law when you apply something to one person and not to another. You just have lawlessness, and it's ideological lawlessness. No borders, no guns for Americans. Here are guns to protect your borders. Ukraine, my body, my choice for abortion. You're hell no when it comes to vaccines. But hold on, there was another thought that I had in terms of. Oh no, Justin Trudeau. Yeah, no. So nobody mentions it. He comes out with a statement that says he has absolutely no, I think he said, intersection with the foundation. He has no direct or indirect connection to the foundation. His brother is still a founding board member of the Trudeau Foundation. That Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation got $125 million seed money from the federal government. I mean, it's the corruption is almost too much, where nobody would believe it because it's just so insidious and in your face. But the tide might change. You know, there will be an election sooner than later. I hope people realize what a disgusting group of people the NDP are. I hope people realize that. And
I hope so.
When it comes to politicians, I say there's only one politician in my lifetime that I think you can trust, and it's Maxime Bernier. And
Wow.
I didn't join the party. I joined the party because they were the only party from day one who respected the Charter of Rights and who had logical, but more importantly, consistent beliefs despite public opinion. Maxime Bernier running in like what we would call the deep south of Quebec, like small town Quebec, saying that Canada needs to reconsider its equalization payments, which grotesquely benefit the province of Quebec. When you know that someone is running on a policy that is going to be wildly unpopular in their riding, but is doing it because he believes it's the right thing to do, that's the exact opposite of a Justin Trudeau or a Pierre Poilievre.
That's a very good point. And I guess to round it out a little bit, now that you're in America, and you're kind of in the hot zone now still too. I mean, you're in Florida, it's the Republican zone, you're in a red state, and it's going to be an election year very soon. So obviously the Sanders-Trump debate is very, very hardcore right now.
Nina, did you hear that Rumble has the exclusive live streaming for the primary debates for the GOP?
No, I didn't.
Chris Pavlovsky tweeted it out earlier. So I don't know which stage of the debate, but they've got exclusive live streaming. It's in a way it's the darkest time to have ever lived through, but in another way it's like
the most entertaining.
What other era would I want to live in? Where
never a dull moment. I swear,
never a dull moment. But like also just eye-opening. History makes more sense now because of the present that I've lived through. The election is going to be wild. I'm going to do some good live streaming stuff. But I'm in the States where in Ottawa when I was live streaming the Trucker Convoy, there was a part of me that was a little nervous about like agitators or agents provocateurs. Like
sure,
stuff.
yeah.
It was post January 6th. And I was nervous that they were going to weaponize it and go after people who were just present there the same way.
There.
They did, but they didn't. But like in the States, it's like you don't mess around with that stuff. So like when Trump was being arraigned, I was thinking, do I go up to New York and live stream outside? There's a number of reasons why I won't do that. Not the least of which is I cannot be assured that someone won't find some crime. And then lo and behold, you can't have a felony when you're on a visa. So
no, you can't get deported back to Canada.
Good law-abiding citizen or resident, but it's going to be a wild year and a half. I'm excited.
It's already wild. I mean, with the Trump indictment, which is like first time in history that's ever something like this has happened, and then now you have DA. I just got to call him DA. DA Bragg coming out and saying, he's going to be suing Jim Jordan. I think that this is nuts. This is like all of this stuff is coming out. And then meanwhile, while I saw this, I also saw this crazy other thing that they're saying that the New York has now unveiled robot dogs.
New York unveils robot police dogs and other high-tech. Yeah, we'll see that. That's crazy.
Insane. And then there's people protesting like no robot dogs. I mean,
has everyone seen the movie Contagion, right? Like, or it was with the. I mean, it's like we're living through a movie. But what has blackpilled me a little bit has been the degree to which society can be whipped up into an irrational frenzy. The contagion about COVID was sort of understandable for a little bit. The contagion about the war in Ukraine was not understandable in the context of COVID. You imagine the same government that now people understand has been lying to them for 2 years, all of a sudden is telling them the truth about whipping them up into a frenzy about Ukraine. The contagion about trans rights, which some gender affirming care, which some people take to mean puberty blockers for kids, the contagion that it's caused in society as a whole, it's stunning and shocking how easily the mob is manipulated in thought and action. But I think a lot of people are waking up. And so exponentially, people are becoming aware of it. And, the Operation Northwoods, the Operation Mockingbirds, all of these historical examples that people could never understand, they're starting to understand now. And with the democratization of the information access on the internet, it's getting around. Which is why the battle for the internet is going to enter hyperdrive in the coming
year. That's why they're doing the whole like TikTok ban and all the all of that stuff.
Canada, Trudeau needs to control the internet because that's how people are getting the truth. People are not reliant on daytime CJAD toxicity or CBC on television. They get it from the internet, and they get the truth from the internet. So what better way to fight the truth than by nationalizing the internet?
Yeah, by basically governing the distribution of it and who's providing this information and how they're going to be deemed found guilty. FIFA, this has been an amazing conversation, man. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm going to get to some of these super chats now because people have been so incredibly generous.
Do it, because some of them I could say easily another 10 minutes.
Yeah, perfect. I'm going to get into these and then and we'll go into that. First of all, I know that there was a 40 pound one here from Local Hero that said, "Oh my God, Viva knows bikes." Double man crush. Yes, it's zip rims. I have my own bike shop and race bikes for a while. So that's amazing.
Best job I ever had was working at Martin Swiss Bikes in Montreal in Westmount. Best job ever, except I spent all of my salary on equipment. And then the ultimate irony of life, I called up Martin Swiss before leaving and I said, "Do you guys have a bike rack? Because I want to put the bikes on the roof." And he's like, "I don't have a bike rack, but I'm selling my trailer. Do you want to buy my trailer?" Boom! Bought the trailer, registered it at the SAAQ, the DMV of Quebec, and then packed our stuff into it.
That's freaking awesome.
Life is weird.
Wow, that's cool. Thank you so much again for that, Local Hero. Jerk Off Juggernaut, thank you so much for gifting a whole bunch of memberships. I think it was like 10 or something memberships that you gifted 10 memberships. So thank you so much for that. There was also a couple of other ones for you that I want to get to. First of all, Canada's loss is Flora's gain.
It's a gain for both. I'm still Canadian. I'm just temporarily residing here.
Oh my God. You know, I keep saying that too, Viva. Like, I'm like, no, I'm always going to be Canadian at heart. Like, I feel like I was raised in Canada. Like, my heart's Canadian. I think like my home is Canada. That's why so much of it, like, just hurts. Like, it just really hurts deep down to see what our country is turning into. And that's why I want to even fight, like, with my voice, I want to fight this creeping fascism, whatever you want to call it. I feel like that's the only thing I can do. Then I will do that. And it's interestingly, Russell Hall says for $5, fascism isn't creeping into Canada. Socialism is maturing, and that is also true. But socialism is a form of fascism, so they're one and the same. Thank you for that. Viva, says John Thomas, for $5. I used to cross the U.S., Canada, and a semi pretty frequently. I only ran into Canadian custom agent. Most U.S. were jerks and had attitudes.
I've only had good experiences with the U.S. customs border people. I've had not so good experiences coming back into Canada. But when I got tested for flipping COVID, coming back to the pool. Despite everything, I've taken. I don't know how many PCR. I don't know how many tests you could take in a week. But,
I've never taken one.
It doesn't feel good. The PCR test was definitely invasive. Not quite as bad as my colonoscopy or my prostate test, but invasive. The other ones, I was. It doesn't matter.
I've never taken one because I was like, it's bullshit. Like, it's not going to tell you anything that you like that especially when Elon Musk came out and was like, "Hey, I took 4," and it was like twice it came back positive and twice it came back negative. I was like, this is the statistics. Like, it's not going to give you the answer you want. And you know what? Like, at the end of the day, you're sick. Stay home in bed. Like, you don't need a test to tell you what kind of sickness you have. It's just crazy.
What they stole from people during COVID, like final moments, funerals, weddings. I mean, they've stolen stuff that can never be returned. And some people are like, well, it's the sunk cost fallacy. Like, people have lost so much. The only thing they can say is, well, we did it for the greater good.
God, that line, that drives me nuts. Like, whenever people are like, well, we didn't know at the time, we were doing it for grandmas and the kids. Yeah, Just stop it.
Mhm.
Dropkick Mickey, thank you for the 1776. Nina, enjoyed you when you were on with Viva a while back, but forgot to subscribe. Glad to see you you guys chatting again. Definitely, this is so cool. I love it. Thank you so much for becoming a member, Max Relax. And then there was another one for you. I think it was right here. Thank you, Jerkoff Juggernaut for the 20. It's I've been curious if the T's who become the 47 of the Minecraft Guild are considered then as detransitioning, and in the end their DNA will prove what they were, despite potentially weird markers that aren't typically based
no,
in
because
reality.
I mean, I think the argument is like when they look at your skeleton, it
Mhm.
is true though, because you're going to have a certain DNA, but the skeleton, if they take these puberty blockers too early on, will not develop the way it ought to have, and so you're going to have narrower hip bones. You're going to say, what was this person? I can't tell. I never thought of that. That's actually kind of that's. But the idea that we're allowing, if an adult wants to do it in full awareness of fact, that's fine. But
Go for it.
if an adult is suffering from mental illness and then exploited into this, as is the case a lot, or they have other issues, as the study out of the UK is showing, that's a problem. And kids,
Just leave kids alone. Just
out.
leave kids alone.
Protect trans kids means don't let them make life-altering decisions that they might regret and might want to undo. That's what it means.
Absolutely. Douchkin wants to know for 10. I really like you both. What do you think on Biden going for a second term?
If I would bet a lot against it. My theory is that they're softening up the indictment of a president so they can indict Biden on something, or find another way to get him out involuntarily if he doesn't find a health reason to. Like they'll get him on the classified documents or something. This, weaponizing indictment of a former president is a two-way street. Essentially, if they say we want Biden out, he doesn't want to get out, which I don't think it would ever be the case. So if we needed to resort to this, we could say, well, look, even application of the law, we're going to indict Biden on any number of his serious issues.
I mean, he's got a lot more to indict on.
He's got good. I'm going to scratch my ankle. Sorry. He's got a lot more, but no, Biden, it's impossible that he could even entertain another 4 years. He's not to make fun. He's clearly suffering from dementia. Clearly.
There's something going on. Like there's been something going on for a long time. And it's just insane to think that there isn't, and that people who are in denial about it, it's just funny to me. I'm like, you have cognitive dissonance. Like there's something going on with you.
Go follow Harry J. Sisson on Twitter. And he's like, Biden is the best president ever. I mean, it's a joke. It's almost a joke. It's like protesting too hard. Like in North Korea, when they have to feign sadness at the death of a leader's relative. Everybody knows they're faking, but they got to cry so hard just to show that.
It's like that in Iran too. It's like that in Iran. Oh no, the Ayatollah is like, oh no.
Yeah, Joe Biden, he is the most eloquent, successful president ever. And the things he says are totally normal, and the way he walks is totally normal, as if anybody who hasn't had a grandmother with senility would not know exactly what they're looking at when they see it. But
oh my God. We got Chet here for 550.
Chet Chisholm. How you doing, Chet?
Thank you both for what you're doing. You're both exemplify what it means to be Canadian. Oh, that means a lot to me.
I had Chet was on the channel, and I've got Chet. You got to get back and tell us what's going on with the National Citizens Inquiry, because I have not been covering it. So we'll
awesome. Okay, I'm gonna have to check him out. And then John here for 10 saying, quit being a commie, Viva. Florida's never letting you go.
You know what the big problem about Florida is? Like, if you want to drive anywhere in the States, you've got to drive like 5 hours to get out of the state. And like you are as detached on landmass as you can be from the rest of the states. Montreal, I could drive a pretty good clip in any direction and go far places. Here it's like, I'm thinking of driving to Chattanooga for our next Viva Barnes Law meetup, but that's 12 hours. So I don't think I can do 12 hours on a Thursday and then 12 hours on a Sunday. But
both you and Barnes need to come down to Cancun, and we got to have some drinks.
I'm a very fearful person. Like I Cancun, it's nice in the resorts, but you got to get from the airport to the resorts. And
I'll get you there. I'll come pick you up. I live right here. I'll come pick you up.
You better be packing serious heat if you're going to do that. We'll.
Oh no! it's so nice here, Viva. Don't fall for the news, Viva.
I'm telling you, I've fallen for it. I turned down a destination
Don't.
wedding in Mexico because I was so I'm scared of traveling. Like I'm aware of my problems.
Oh my God. But I'll talk to you. I'll convert you because I'm telling you the lies that you hear, especially about Cancun. There's a lot of lies. Okay. I know I was guilty of the same thing, but
I'm open-minded, Nina. I'm not stubborn.
I know. At least you're open-minded. So that's good. And then we had Jerk Off Drunk It Up for another 10. Thank you so much. Says, as someone who lives in central New York, I can, for the most part, say that the rest of upstate could care less if NYC and Albany fell into the ocean like California.
Yeah. I used to go fishing in Pulaski, New York, and like that was generally the. It's a different area. It's a different part of the country. It's a different part of the state. But yep.
60-bit mascot for $5 says, good stream, great crowd. Cheers on the fine hump day. Thank you. Yeah. And then we had Nebraska because for $10 says Nebraska because you would eliminate all extremists if instead of 49% of the legislation at elections, a 70% threshold would force a moderation and working together. Thoughts on this? I'm not sure what I think of this at all. Okay.
It's a very complicated political question.
Furby Slayer for $5 says we don't need more McConnells or Grahams. They're the real issue with the GOP. We have to start pruning the disease branches and promote new people. They need new people. They need new life in that party.
The problem is politics attracts the wrong people because good. And I say this having run for office. I didn't do it voluntarily. I did it very reluctantly, but it attracts the wrong people for the wrong reasons. So you
have to have something in you. That's what I always thought about becoming a lawyer too. I was like, I don't know if I have that.
Yeah, no, I'd say there's more lawyers who are in it for justice than there are politicians who are in it.
That's true. That's true.
There's a lot who are in it for positive change, but the industry kills the person if they weren't already dead to begin with. So
it's true. Elsa, thank you so much for becoming a member. You're amazing. I had a couple member chats, and I'm going to read it, and then we're going to call it. We had a member message from MedStep member. Thank you. It says, I love you, Nina, and tell Viva I love him too. So there you go. There's more love. And Lug Nuts, thank you for your membership message saying hello, Viva and Heavenly Paradise and the Heavenly Paradise. Nina, thank you so much for that. TZ Burton said, Viva, good, love the sidebar, welcome. Thank you so much for that. This is a terrible name. Thank you for the $1.99. Says great interview and great guest. Thank you so much.
And it's a skunk. The avatar is a skunk, no less. Okay.
I know. I had $1 on Rumble. Thank you. Good. Another one, Feet Lord Avatar. Viva, why you tweet like a 16-year-old girl asking for someone else? Thank you for that.
I don't, dude. Okay, if you mean like angry, well, then I find that to be a prejudice. No,
No, I think that means the frequency. I think that
because I use Twitter as a diary. Like Twitter is my notebook. So like right now, I'm going live in 10 minutes with Eric July.
Woo! That's going to be amazing.
It's going to be good. I've been listening to him all day. But like Twitter's my notebook, my diary, and my not my confession, but my rage. It's my rage. It's my rage place.
It's a good place to document your rage. Are you going live on his channel or is he coming on your channel?
He's coming on mine.
Okay. Fleet Lord Avatar, thank you for the 2. Rumble Rant, good. Again, thank you so much for that. And with that, Viva, tell everyone where they can find you and what you got coming up next, which is the Eric July thing.
So Viva Fry on Rumble. That's where we're going to be live in 8 minutes. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com on locals. The Viva Fry for the 16-year-old girl who tweets angrily on Twitter. And what else? I'm on YouTube, but it's gotten to the point now where I actually use YouTube as the backup and not the primary, which is the way it should be. But it's Viva Fry on Rumble, and Eric July is going to be fantastic. So
it's good. He's going to be a great guy. He is so much fun. Tell him I say hello.
Absolutely.
And also, everybody, all of the links that Viva just talked about is in the description, as well as Darren, my awesome mod, is dropping them in the chat. So you want to make sure that you're signed up for everything there. Viva. Thank
Nina,
you so much.
We will do it again because an hour and 50 minutes flies by. We'll do it again on my channel, on your channel. We will do it again because there's still more to talk about.
Absolutely. There's so much happening, so we need to keep in touch. And so until next time, everybody, have a good one. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Have a good night.